Correct answer. C. Arts may reference multiple assets and face broader risk controls, whereas EMTs mimic e-money and fall under stricter issuer obligations. Explanation. Under EU MiCA, asset reference tokens ARTs are those that refer to multiple assets, including commodities or baskets of currencies. E-money tokens, EMTs, on the other hand, are pegged to a single fiat currency and are designed to serve as a payment method akin to traditional electronic money. EMT issuers must comply with electronic money directive obligations and obtain appropriate authorization, while ARTs face broader scrutiny for systemic risk mitigation. MiCA ensures proportional supervision, depending on the token's design and purpose. Correct answer. C. Arts may reference multiple assets and face broader risk controls, whereas EMTs mimic e-money and fall under stricter issuer obligations. Explanation. Under EU MiCA, asset reference tokens ARTs are those that refer to multiple assets, including commodities or baskets of currencies. E-money tokens, EMTs, on the other hand, are pegged to a single fiat currency and are designed to serve as a payment method akin to traditional electronic money. EMT issuers must comply with electronic money directive obligations and obtain appropriate authorization, while ARTs face broader scrutiny for systemic risk mitigation. MiCA ensures proportional supervision, depending on the token's design and purpose. Question 2. What is the primary compliance challenge VASPs face when implementing the FATF travel rule in decentralized or non-custodial wallet environments? A. The lack of access to source code of DeFi protocols. B. The anonymity of protocol developers. C. The absence of identifiable counterparties to exchange the required personal information. D. Legal prohibition of smart contracts in most FATF jurisdictions. Correct answer. C. The absence of identifiable counterparties to exchange the required personal information. Explanation. The FATF travel rule mandates that originator and beneficiary information be transmitted for virtual asset transfers above specific thresholds. In decentralized or non-custodial wallet environments, e.g., peer-to-peer DeFi transactions, VASPs struggle to comply because there is no clear counterparty to exchange the required data with. This creates a fundamental conflict between privacy-preserving designs and FATF's AML expectations. The FATF has acknowledged these limitations and continues to issue guidance. Question 3. Ms. Ferreira, a compliance officer at a crypto exchange in Brazil, notices that a newly listed token's trading volume has drastically increased, and large sums are being transferred to a wallet address tied to a known darknet market. The platform uses Chainalysis and detects possible mixer involvement with obfuscated source of funds. What is the most appropriate compliance response? A. Ignore the transaction, since the address is not on an official sanctions list. B. Continue monitoring the wallet and alert the legal team only if a law enforcement inquiry is made. C. File a suspicious transaction report (STR) with Brazil's COAF and consider freezing the assets. D. Immediately report the address to the darknet market administrators. Correct answer. C. File a suspicious transaction report (STR) with Brazil's COAF and consider freezing the assets. Explanation. Given the presence of mixer use, ties to a darknet market, and high-risk wallet behavior, the appropriate response under AML-CTF obligations is to file an STR with COAF, Brazil's Financial Intelligence Unit. This aligns with FATF and local AML rules. Ignoring the transaction or delaying reporting could result in regulatory breaches. Wallet freezing may be considered based on internal risk assessment and applicable legal advice. Question 4. Which of the following best describes the jurisdictional treatment of cryptoassets in the United States, particularly in terms of defining securities and commodities. A. The SEC classifies all cryptoassets as securities. The CFTC only oversees centralized exchanges. B. The SEC uses the Howey test to assess securities, while the CFTC treats certain cryptoassets like Bitcoin as commodities. C. The CFTC prohibits any crypto trading outside its registration system. D. The SEC enforces AML rules, while the CFTC governs crypto wallets. Correct answer. B. The SEC uses the Howey test to assess securities, while the CFTC treats certain cryptoassets like Bitcoin as commodities. Explanation. In the U.S., the SEC applies the Howey test to determine if a token constitutes a security, particularly if it involves an investment of money in a common enterprise with expectations of profit. The CFTC treats Bitcoin and Ethereum as commodities and asserts jurisdiction over derivatives or futures markets involving these assets. The regulatory split creates compliance complexity for crypto firms. Question 5. Which red flag is most indicative of tumbling or coin mixing in blockchain forensic investigations? A. High transaction volume with consistent value across wallets. B. A series of identical microtransactions from various addresses to a single wallet. C. The use of time-locked smart contracts for yield farming. D. Repeated use of regulated exchanges for fiat off-ramping. Correct answer. B. A series of identical microtransactions from various addresses to a single wallet. Explanation. Coin tumblers or mixers often utilize a series of small, uniform microtransactions to obscure origin and destination of funds, making tracing difficult. Forensic tools like Chainalysis and TRM Labs identify such patterns, especially when multiple wallets funnel similar-sized funds into a central address. The goal is to break the link between the source and ultimate destination. Question 6. Mr. Kim, head of compliance for a Korean VASP, is informed that a high-value client is transacting with a wallet that recently appeared in a UN Security Council report tied to North Korean cybercrime activity. What action should Mr. Kim take immediately under international sanctions frameworks? A. File a tax disclosure with local revenue authorities. B. Report the address to the token issuer and continue monitoring. C. Conduct internal audit, but delay external reporting until confirmation. D. Screen, freeze any linked funds and file a report to the Financial Services Commission, FSC, and UN-designated channels. Correct answer. D. Screen, freeze any linked funds and file a report to the Financial Services Commission, FSC, and UN-designated channels. Explanation. UN sanctions are binding on member states, including South Korea, which mandates prompt reporting of any sanctioned party involvement. Mr. Kim must act immediately by freezing the associated assets, performing internal analysis, and filing a report to the FSC and relevant global authorities. Delaying action may result in legal liability and reputational risk. Question 7. What is the main legal challenge in enforcing global sanctions against privacy-focused coins like Monero? A. They are already banned in every FATF member state. B. Their transaction records are permanently stored and can be retroactively accessed. C. Their obfuscation methods prevent address attribution and compliance monitoring. D. They are only available through regulated exchanges. Correct answer. C. Their obfuscation methods prevent address attribution and compliance monitoring. Explanation. Privacy coins like Monero use technologies such as ring signatures, stealth addresses, and confidential transactions, which make it extremely difficult to trace wallet activity or identify counterparties. This undermines the ability to conduct sanctions screening and AML verification, making them high risk in the view of FATF and OFAC. Question 8. In the context of cross-chain compliance investigations, what is the primary issue when tracing funds that move across multiple blockchain networks? A. The presence of stable coins. B. Loss of audit trails due to different block times. C. Lack of consistent data standards and bridge anonymity. D. Regulatory approval needed from each protocol team. Correct answer: C. Lack of consistent data standards and bridge anonymity. Explanation: cross-chain bridges often do not retain source address information when moving assets from one chain to another. This, combined with different metadata standards and anonymity in the bridging protocols, causes loss of transaction traceability. Regulators and forensic analysts struggle with such gaps, as highlighted by Interpol and blockchain analytics firms. Question 9. Dr. Lemaire, working at a Swiss digital asset firm, discovers a customer wallet linked to an address newly added to the US OFAC SDN list due to connections with ransomware activity. The transaction originated from a mixer. What should be the firm's first step? A. Delete the transaction records to avoid regulatory scrutiny. B. Disengage from all US-based clients. C. Freeze the assets and notify FINMA, and consider secondary reporting to OFAC. D. Send an email to the customer asking for more information. Correct answer: C. Freeze the assets and notify FINMA, and consider secondary reporting to OFAC. Explanation: while Switzerland is not under U.S. jurisdiction, it follows FATF standards and maintains strong cooperation with global sanctions enforcement. Upon detection of a sanctioned wallet, the firm must freeze assets, notify FINMA, Swiss regulator, and if applicable, alert OFAC. This approach aligns with best practices and risk mitigation under international law. Question 10. Which global standard setter provides the most widely referenced guidance for virtual asset AML/CTF risk typologies? A. The Basel Committee on Banking Supervision. B. The International Monetary Fund. C. The Financial Action Task Force FATF. D. The European Securities and Markets Authority ESMA. Correct answer: C. The Financial Action Task Force FATF. Explanation: the FATF is the leading international body issuing standards and typologies for AML/CTF compliance. Its guidance on virtual assets and VASPs forms the basis of national regulations in most jurisdictions, especially regarding travel rule implementation, risk-based supervision, and red flags for suspicious behavior. Question 11. Which of the following statements best describes the role of the Financial Stability Board, FSB, in global cryptoasset regulation? A. The FSB issues binding legal directives for crypto taxation. B. The FSB coordinates national financial authorities to ensure global financial stability and has issued guidelines on stablecoins and crypto risks. C. The FSB operates as a licensing agency for VASPs in emerging markets. D. The FSB enforces AML regulations in cooperation with FATF and the SEC. Correct answer: B. The FSB coordinates national financial authorities to ensure global financial stability and has issued guidelines on stablecoins and crypto risks. Explanation: the FSB is a global advisory body that provides recommendations, not binding laws. Its primary role is to promote financial stability, and it has been instrumental in producing guidance on stablecoins, operational risks in crypto markets, and calls for regulatory coordination across jurisdictions. It works alongside IMF, BIS, FATF, but doesn't enforce laws directly. Question 12. Which forensic technique is most commonly used to identify clusters of wallet addresses controlled by the same entity in a public blockchain like Bitcoin? A. Statistical consensus. B. Deep web scraping. C. Multi-input heuristic analysis. D. Biometric tagging of wallets. Correct answer: C. Multi-input heuristic analysis. Explanation: multi-input heuristic is a widely used technique in blockchain forensics. It assumes that when multiple inputs are used in a single transaction, they likely belong to the same owner, as the user must have access to all private keys. This enables clustering of wallets, which tools like Chainalysis and elliptic use for attribution. Question 13. Ms. O'Connell, head of legal compliance at a VASP in Ireland, is preparing a cross-border transaction involving both an EU customer and a US-based entity. She must comply with the EU's MiCA framework, but also consider possible US sanctions risks. Which step is most essential to ensure the transaction complies with both jurisdictions? A. Use a privacy coin like Zcash to anonymize the transaction. B. Only screen the U.S. counterparty, as EU rules do not mandate pre-checks. C. Conduct sanctions screening against both EU and US SDN lists, and consult with legal counsel before execution. D. Submit the transaction details to the SEC for pre-approval. Correct answer: C. Conduct sanctions screening against both EU and US SDN lists, and consult with legal counsel before execution. Explanation: cross-border crypto transactions must consider dual compliance, especially when US sanctions, via OFAC, and EU asset freezing regulations are in scope. Firms must screen both parties, and legal review ensures compliance with MiCA, EU AMLD, and potential US extraterritorial sanctions. Use of privacy coins may increase non-compliance risks. Question 14. Why is reliance solely on a single blockchain analytics platform considered insufficient for robust crypto forensic investigations? A. Blockchain data is not retrievable after 24 hours. B. Single platforms can have gaps in attribution, heuristics, or proprietary coverage. C. Most analytics platforms are free and lack forensic accuracy. D. They are only licensed for use by government entities. Correct answer: B. Single platforms can have gaps in attribution, heuristics, or proprietary coverage. Explanation: while tools like Chainalysis, TRM Labs, and Elliptic are powerful, each uses proprietary heuristics and may have gaps in wallet attribution. Relying solely on one may lead to false negatives or missed patterns, especially for less common blockchains. Cross-platform triangulation ensures greater forensic accuracy and supports legal defensibility in reports. Question 15. Which international standard or regulation mandates financial institutions to freeze and report assets linked to designated persons or entities? A. GDPR Article 17. B. UN Security Council Resolutions, AG 1267-1373. C. EU MiFID II Guidelines. D. IMF Anti-Corruption Directive. Correct answer: B. UN Security Council Resolutions, AG 1267-1373. Explanation: UNSC resolutions, especially 1267, terrorism-related sanctions, and 1373, require member states to freeze assets of listed entities or persons and prohibit dealing with them. These obligations extend to financial institutions and VASPs, forming the legal basis for many national sanctions regimes, including the EU, US, UK, and others. Question 16. Mr. Alvarez, a compliance analyst in Mexico, flags a transaction involving Monero sent to an Iranian exchange listed on the OFAC SDN list. The sender claims it's for educational purposes. What's the most prudent compliance response? A. Allow the transaction as Monero is not regulated in Mexico. B. Escalate the case internally, block the transaction, and file a suspicious activity report. C. Accept the client's explanation and allow future Monero transactions. D. Contact the Iranian exchange for clarification. Correct answer. B. Escalate the case internally, block the transaction, and file a suspicious activity report. Explanation. The use of Monero, a privacy coin, and involvement of a sanctioned Iranian exchange makes this transaction high risk. Under FATF and OFAC guidelines, the firm must act swiftly. Blocking the transaction and filing a suspicious activity report (SAR) is critical. Explanations like educational use don't exempt from legal obligations. Question 17. What is one major regulatory concern regarding the use of decentralized crypto mixers like Tornado Cash? A. They are licensed-to brokers. B. They enhance transparency and reduce AML risks. C. They can be used to launder illicit proceeds and evade sanctions detection. D. They are fully integrated with the SWIFT payment system. Correct answer. C. They can be used to launder illicit proceeds and evade sanctions detection. Explanation. Decentralized mixers like Tornado Cash obscure blockchain trails by mixing coins from multiple users. These services have been linked to money laundering, terrorist financing, and sanctions evasion, e.g., Lazarus Group from North Korea. In 2022, OFAC sanctioned Tornado Cash for facilitating over $1 billion in illicit laundering. Question 18. What role do virtual asset service providers, VASPs, play under FATF's Recommendation 15? A. They are exempt from AML laws if decentralized. B. They are required to adopt AML-CTF measures similar to financial institutions. C. They must only report transactions involving fiat currencies. D. They only need to screen wallets from blacklisted exchanges. Correct answer. B. They are required to adopt AML-CTF measures similar to financial institutions. Explanation. FATF Recommendation 15 extended AML-CTF standards to VASPs, requiring them to conduct KYC-CDD, monitor transactions, report suspicious activity, and comply with the travel rule. This ensures that crypto services uphold similar obligations to traditional financial institutions, closing regulatory loopholes. Question 19. Ms. Zhang, a compliance officer at a Singapore-based DEX aggregator, notices that one of the platform's integrated protocols is routing transactions through addresses tied to ransomware attacks. The protocol is decentralized and outside her control. What should she do? A. Do nothing, as she doesn't control the protocol. B. Notify the Monetary Authority of Singapore, MAS. Document the risk and consider delisting the protocol. C. Send a blockchain transaction to the address, warning them of sanctions. D. Inform users that they must do their own due diligence. Correct answer. B. Notify the Monetary Authority of Singapore, MAS. Document the risk and consider delisting the protocol. Explanation. Even if decentralized protocols are outside direct control, DEX aggregators that facilitate access may still bear compliance responsibilities under MAS and FATF guidance. Ms. Zhang must report to MAS, document the issue, and consider removing or geofencing access to mitigate risk. Ignoring it exposes the platform to legal and reputational harm. Question 20. Which of the following is a key feature of chain hopping that complicates forensic investigations? A. Using only centralized exchanges for off-ramping. B. Transferring tokens across multiple blockchains to confuse the audit trail. C. Relying on proof-of-stake mechanisms. D. Signing transactions with multiple signatures. Correct answer. B. Transferring tokens across multiple blockchains to confuse the audit trail. Explanation. Chain hopping refers to the practice of moving assets across different blockchains, e.g., from Ethereum to BNB chain to Tron, to obfuscate transaction history and evade detection. This creates gaps in traceability for regulators and forensic teams, especially when using non-KYC exchanges or privacy bridges. Question 21. What is the key challenge regulators face in applying traditional securities laws, like the U.S. Securities Act of 1933, to initial coin offerings, ICOs? A. Most ICOs are automatically compliant with the Securities Act. B. Blockchain protocols prevent regulators from knowing issuer identities. C. The decentralized structure and lack of corporate issuer blur the application of existing definitions of investment contracts. D. ICOs are exempt under all FATF member state laws. Correct answer. C. The decentralized structure and lack of corporate issuer blur the application of existing definitions of investment contracts. Explanation. ICOs often involve decentralized governance, no clearly identifiable issuer, and novel token economics, which complicate the application of legacy securities laws. The Howey test remains a guide in the U.S., but its interpretation is challenged by these emerging structures. The SEC and other regulators have issued guidance, e.g., DAO report, FinHub framework, to clarify when a token sale qualifies as a securities offering. Question 22. How do blockchain forensic tools attribute a wallet address to a real-world identity in a legally defensible manner? A. They use zero-knowledge proofs embedded in public nodes. B. They scrape social media metadata and use predictive AI. C. They rely on clustering heuristics, off-chain data, exchange KYC leaks, and law enforcement cooperation. D. They extract IP addresses directly from wallet applications. Correct answer. C. They rely on clustering heuristics, off-chain data, exchange KYC leaks, and law enforcement cooperation. Explanation. Tools like Chainalysis and Elliptic combine on-chain heuristics, multi-input, behavior patterns with off-chain data, including exchange KYC leaks, open-source intelligence, OSINT, and tips from law enforcement. Attribution is not purely algorithmic. It involves probabilistic scoring and evidence correlation to ensure defensibility in court or regulatory action. Question 23. Mr. Certdemy, head of compliance at a Nigerian fintech firm, receives a transaction flag from a blockchain analytics tool. It indicates funds routed through multiple addresses previously linked to terrorism financing in the Middle East. Nigeria is a FATF observer state. What should be the best course of action? A. Ignore the alert since the firm is outside FATF jurisdiction. B. File a suspicious transaction report, STR, with the Nigerian FIU and consider account suspension pending investigation. C. Convert the funds into stablecoins to mitigate volatility risk. D. Notify the beneficiary without regulatory escalation. Correct answer. B. File a suspicious transaction report, STR, with the Nigerian FIU and consider account suspension pending investigation. Explanation. Despite being an observer, Nigeria aligns with FATF AML-CTF recommendations. The detection of links to terrorism financing demands immediate action. File an STR, conduct internal review, and suspend activity to prevent further exposure. Failing to do so risks violating domestic AML laws and international obligations. Question 24. What is the main reason VASPs must conduct real-time sanction screening rather than batch processing? A. Most crypto wallets expire within 1 hour. B. OFAC requires hourly audits of all VASPs. C. Cryptocurrency transactions settle rapidly, enabling instant exposure to blacklisted addresses. D. Real-time screening is a FATF non-mandatory suggestion. Correct answer. C. Cryptocurrency transactions settle rapidly, enabling instant exposure to blacklisted addresses. Explanation. Crypto operates in near real time, with transactions being irreversible once confirmed. This creates a risk that funds are moved to or from sanctioned addresses before batch checks catch them. OFAC and EU sanctions regimes expect real-time screening to reduce compliance gaps. Tools like Elliptic Lens provide such capabilities for VASPs. Question 25. Which of the following actions best represents compliance with the blocking requirement? Under OFAC rules, when a U.S. person identifies a crypto wallet on the SDN list. A. Freeze the wallet funds and report to OFAC within 10 business days. B. Allow a one-time exception for P2P remittances. C. Convert funds to a privacy coin and send back to origin. D. Disclose the wallet information only if law enforcement requests it. Correct answer. A. Freeze the wallet funds and report to OFAC within 10 business days. Explanation. The blocking requirement mandates that any property or interest in property of an SDN, including crypto wallets, must be blocked, i.e., frozen and reported to OFAC within 10 days. This is part of 31 CFR Parts 500-599 OFAC regulations. No exceptions apply for the nature of transaction, e.g., P2P or charitable use. Question 26. Ms. Aoyama, a compliance officer in Tokyo, observes incoming transactions through a wallet recently flagged for supporting a North Korean state-backed cyber group. Japan's JFSA mandates adherence to UN sanctions. What should Ms. Aoyama do next? A. Wait for OFAC confirmation before acting. B. Ignore the flag since the funds were anonymized. C. Freeze assets and file a report with the JFSA and National Police Agency. D. Delete the wallet from the platform to prevent future alerts. Correct answer. C. Freeze assets and file a report with the JFSA and National Police Agency. Explanation. Japan enforces UN sanctions strictly, especially concerning cyber threats from North Korea. JFSA requires immediate freezing of assets, internal investigation, and notification to both financial and law enforcement authorities. Failure to act could lead to regulatory penalties and compromise Japan's international commitments. Question 27. Which international regulation or guideline most directly informs the development of sanctions screening obligations for crypto firms? A. UN Model Law on E-commerce. B. FATF Recommendation 16 and the OFAC Sanctions Guidelines. C. Basel III Capital Adequacy Rules. D. GDPR Article 5. Correct answer. B. FATF Recommendation 16 and the OFAC Sanctions Guidelines. Explanation. FATF Recommendation 16, Travel Rule, requires transmission of originator and beneficiary information to mitigate sanctions evasion and money laundering. OFAC Sanctions Guidelines instruct U.S. persons and firms on how to screen, block, and report transactions involving SDNs, including crypto addresses. Together, they form the global blueprint for sanctions compliance in the digital asset space. Question 28. Which of the following best describes a red flag during a blockchain forensic investigation for illicit crypto activity? A. A wallet that only interacts with DeFi protocols. B. Transactions occurring in consistent amounts with identical timing across unrelated addresses. C. Repeated use of exchange withdrawal features. D. Holding tokens with high liquidity. Correct answer. B. Transactions occurring in consistent amounts with identical timing across unrelated addresses. Explanation. This pattern suggests automated laundering behavior or mixer-tumbler usage, designed to break transaction trails. Forensics platforms monitor for timing-based obfuscation, where uniform values and synchronized actions are used to disguise flow. These are known as structuring or layering techniques, red flags under FATF typologies. Question 29. Dr. Hassan, Chief Risk Officer at a UAE exchange, receives notification that a major client has received tokens from an address involved in a Russian ransomware syndicate under EU and US sanctions. The client claims ignorance and requests to convert the funds. What is the best course of action? A. Convert the funds quickly before freezing to avoid loss. B. Allow the transaction if the wallet has no direct link to the syndicate leader. C. Freeze the funds immediately and consult UAE Central Bank and legal counsel before any further action. D. Proceed with conversion, but notify law enforcement afterward. Correct answer. C. Freeze the funds immediately and consult UAE Central Bank and legal counsel before any further action. Explanation. Given the EU-US sanctions nexus, the VASP must act swiftly to freeze assets, document all communications, and notify UAE authorities. While the client's claim may be valid, due diligence and sanctions law take precedence. UAE Cabinet Resolution No. 74/2020 enforces strict anti-terror financing and sanctions screening on VASPs. Question 30. What is a critical forensic implication of using mixers that leverage zero-knowledge proofs, ZKPs, like Tornado Cash? A. They store all transaction logs on IPFS. B. ZKPs make it mathematically impossible to link input and output addresses, hindering attribution. C. They are illegal under GDPR for storing user data. D. They enhance liquidity and reduce compliance costs. Correct answer. B. ZKPs make it mathematically impossible to link input and output addresses, hindering attribution. Explanation. Zero-knowledge proofs allow users to prove ownership or action without revealing underlying data. Mixers like Tornado Cash use this to disconnect transaction trails, rendering blockchain analysis ineffective. This is why tools like Tornado Cash are sanctioned by OFAC and considered a high compliance risk in FATF's typology reports.